Hello, welcome back to my channel. In this series, I'm going to start questions related to macroeconomics. The first model that we're going to discuss would be ISLM model. I'm not going to go in theory of this model, but my main focus would be to solve numerical questions like this. So it would be easier for you to understand these questions when you're trying to attempt it for your exam or whatever coursework you have. But I'm going to give you a brief introduction or brief explanation of ISLM model before we jump into solving the first question. Let's start with IS model. Or before that, macroeconomics has two main branches. It's divided into two categories. One is good and services market, other is money market. Keynesian curve or GDP covers this market. Monetary policy or central banks or asset liability stuff covers this money market. In this ISLM model, we're going to look at mix of these two models or to find a middle point or equilibrium between these models. Let's start with IS. IS deals with goods and services market. It tells us how much economy is producing, how much you're consuming, how much government is expanding in that. We're going to use Keynesian curve to drive this. I'm not going to go in detail of that. The main relationship in IS curve is Y and interest rate have inverse relationship, and it can be shown like this. Interest rate goes over here, Y goes over here. IS curve states that when interest rate is very high, output of a country will be low. When interest rate reduces, output increases. And that interest rate relationship between interest rate and Y is through investment. When cost of borrowing or interest rate is very high, investment reduces. When investment reduces, output reduces, which is translated into IS curve. Moving on to LM curve represents equilibrium in money market. It's derived through money demand and money supply, and it tells us that there is a positive relationship between money, between Y and between interest rate. So it looks like this. When interest rate is high, equilibrium output is high. When interest rate reduces, equilibrium output reduces. This is the main crux of ISLM model, and in order to find a middle point of equilibrium, we have to intersect these. That will give us Y star or I star values. We'll look at these models one by one, or these equations one after another, and then we'll jump into IS equilibrium. The first function here is consumption function. It depends on autonomous consumption, which is 400, and also depends on marginal propensity to consume. That 0.25 here is marginal propensity to consume times with disposable income. YD here is disposable income, which is Y minus taxes. 0.525, if I were to interpret it, it's gonna go like this: that what will be the consumption, or how much consumption will increase when $1 income increases? It's gonna increase by 0.25 or 25%. That's what MPC tells us. Investment function is the same as of consumption function, with one additional thing, that it has a negative relationship between interest rate. When interest rate increases, investment decreases. That is what IS curve captures. Then we have government spending and taxes. These are exogenous factors outside of the control of the model. They are determined by government. So it's not in this model's control. They are not endogenous. Moving on to money market. Money market is M over P, and in the form of money demand, and M over P in the form of money supply. M over P, if I were to start with M here represents money, P here price level. Whenever a variable is divided by price, it becomes real money, and it's money demand. It depends positively on income. Positively on income would mean that when income per person is high, they'll demand more money. Obviously, they have more purchasing power at that point. But it depends negatively on interest rate. When interest rate is very high, money demand would decrease, because at that time it would be way too convenient or opportunistic to spend or to put that money in saving instead of consuming it. And the second function here is money supply. Money supply in most cases is constant. If I were to represent this graphically, graph is very easy way to visually analyze these functions. That's why I'm just going into graphs as well. Let's start with money demand. If this is a money market, money or quantity of money goes on this side, interest rate goes on this side. Money demand function looks like this, downward sloping, because it represents that there is a negative relationship between money and this, and the money supply would be this, a straight line. This is the equilibrium interest rate, this will be the equilibrium money, and from here we'll be able to drive LM curve. Now we're gonna jump into question 1. Question 1 is you're supposed to derive IS relationship from this equation. IS relationship would mean that first you need to be able to write down its formula. IS relationship is derived from equilibrium or from the total output, which is sum of consumption plus investment per government spending. All you need to do is put these functions in here and derive it or solve it from there. So consumption at this point is 400. Disposable income is this. I'm gonna open the disposable function, or disposable incomes function. It's gonna be y minus taxes. And now I'm gonna put investment function, which is 300 plus 0.25 y minus 1500 I, and then lastly we had government spending, which is 600. I'm gonna solve it from here. It would be 0.25 times y, and instead of taxes I'm gonna put it as 400. 0.25 times 400 plus 300 plus 0.25 y minus 1500 I plus 600. Whichever variable has y in it or coefficient has y in it, I'm gonna bring it to the left hand side. It's gonna be 0.251 and the second 0.25 with y, and solving it from here it will be 400 minus 100 plus 300 plus 600 minus 1500 I. This whole thing, after solving it, it's gonna be 0.5 y. After solving this constant, it's gonna be 1200, and that will be 1500 times I. Now we need to get rid of 0.5. All I need to do is divide 0.5 on both sides, and that will give me equilibrium output as 2400 minus 3000 times I. This is the IS relationship that we have derived from here. It tells us that the interest rate negatively depends on y, and the intercept of that function is this. So if I were to write it down, it's gonna look like this. This negative sign represents that it's going to be a downward sloping curve. Moving on to question 2. Question 2 is you're supposed to find LM curve from here. For LM curve, start by putting money demand equal to money supply. Okay, and we're gonna solve it from here. From that point on, money demand in that point is 3000 minus 2y, 2y minus 12,000, and the money supply here is constant, which is 3000. This has to be I. Let's take 12,000 I. It's negative. Bring it to other sides. Its sign will change. 3000 will come over here, and this is gonna look like this. 1000 I. Now divide 12,000 on both sides, and this is the ILM relationship, minus 3000 divided by 12,000. Now you can see that there is a positive relationship between interest rate and y. Here interest rate is the dependent variable, income is the independent variable, so there is a positive relationship between them. LM would go like this. We have y over here and interest rate over here, showing that when income increases, when interest rate increases, income is going to increase too with that. That's the LM relationship. Now the third question is we're supposed to find equilibrium output from that. That would mean that looking at the IS curve, IS relationship, which turns out to be 2400 minus 3000 times I, and from LM curve we do know that I is 2y minus 3000 divided by 12,000. So we can solve equilibrium output or y from here, because now we do know what interest rate is. I'm going to start by writing IS curve here, which is 12, IS relationship or equation here, which is this, and we do know that the value of interest rate is this, so I'm going to say that put value of I in this equation. So it would be 2400 minus 3000, and instead of interest rate I'm going to write it down as 2y minus 3000 divided by 12,000. Solving it from here, 2400 minus 6000 y divided by 12,000, minus and minus will be plus, and gonna be and divided by this, and solving from here it will be 2400 minus 0.5y plus 750, and this here is just y. Bring that y to other side, and it's gonna be it's gonna be positive 0.5 y, and on this side it will be 2400 plus 750, and we can solve it from here. Simplify it from here will be 1.5 3150 over here, and now divide 1.5 on both sides. This is equilibrium output, which is 3150 divided by 1.5, and that gives us 2100 as equilibrium output using the values that is given to us. Moving on to question 4. Now you're supposed to find equilibrium level of interest rate from here. All you need to do is go back to LM curve. I was to y minus 3000 divided by 12,000. All you need to do is put the value of y in here, 2100 minus 3000 divided by 12,000, and simplify it from here. After simplifying it, we'll end up getting 0.1, or because this whole thing interest rate always have to be interest in the percentage form, you can write it down as multiplying it with 100. I can write it down as 10%. Using the information that is given to us, we can say that interest rate in this economy will be 10%. We were to quickly draw this curve again. IS curve goes here, LM curve goes here, and now the intersection point tells us that equilibrium output in the economy will be 2100, and equilibrium interest rate here is supposed to be at 0.1. Moving on to the last and final question of this, which is solve for consumption, investment, and government spending. We do not have to solve for government spending. We already know that it's 600. Let's start with consumption. Consumption function was 400 plus 0.5 YD. Now we do know that y is 2100. Taxes were already 400. So putting these values in consumption function, it's gonna be 0.25. 2100 minus 400. Solving it from here, it's gonna be, this whole thing will be 425 and this whole thing will be 825. So the consumption from this function will be 825. Moving to investment part. Investment here is 300. Investment function was 300.5y minus 1500i. Now we do know that y is 2100, I is 0.10. I'm gonna put these values inside this equation and simplify it from here. 2100 minus 1500 times with interest rate, which is 0.1 obviously, and by solving it, simplifying it, we'll get investment as 675. Government spending was already 600. Now we're gonna confirm that if we add all these together, would we get the same value of y or not? So I'm gonna write that down, that y using the IS relationship, it's I plus C plus I plus G. Now we do know that the C in this was turned out to be 825, investment turned out to be 675, government spending turned out to be 600. And once I add all three of these together, and it's gonna give me sum of 2100, which is exactly same as of the value that we got earlier. This was the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. These questions look complicated, but once you get into it, to simplify it, become way too easier to understand. My main journey or my main focus with these videos would be to simplify these things for you as much as possible. And I'll see you in the next video. If you have any question, leave those in the comment box. I'll get back to you. Thank you so much for going through my video. See you again.